Good morning and welcome to Travels with Monkey Boy. Today we are taking you back to Tanzania, 30 years in the past, day 5 of our trip. Packed, breakfast, and checked out of the hotel by 8. Those were our orders. Today we had the most unimaginable task to backtrack all the way back to within 60 miles of Arusha. We knew as we were driving out across these lethally bumpy roads that eventually we would have to return on them. The problem was that it took us 3 days to get this far, and today we would cover that same distance in one day. 8 hours of driving in a Vegematic. Our first excitement came within 5 minutes of leaving the hotel. The van was in front of our Range Rover, and they got a fair bit ahead of us when they had to stop as a herd of elephants crossed the road. By the time we were there, the elephants were off in the woods eating. Still, it was our closest encounter yet with elephants. Paul told us he feared elephants more than any other animal. He said the Range Rover weighed about a ton, and a bull elephant weighs about 6 tons. So for him, tossing aside a car was no big deal. He said one time when he was stopped watching on a safari, an elephant reached in and pulled his door off its hinges. He said on another company safari, an elephant had reached into the open roofed part of the Range Rover, grabbed a teenage girl with his trunk, yanked her out of the Rover, and squashed her. Still, we hadn't seen many elephants to this point, but Paul said the park we were going to tonight, Tarangire, was littered with them. So we watched the elephants for about 5 minutes and then drove on. 5 minutes later, we had our next thrill of the day. We got to see a beautiful adult jackal laying dead in the middle of the road. We stopped the Rover and all got out to look at it. It was a fresh kill, and it was a nice kill. It wasn't squashed. It was more like it had run into a wheel or something. A thin trail of blood dripped from its mouth. Of course, we knew exactly who the killer was. It was Edward driving in the van in front of us. I wanted to stay and wait for the vultures to come, but everyone else kept saying, 8 hours, 8 hours. So we went on. To describe the rest of the day is hard. I would say it's not unlike riding the teacups at Disneyland for 8 hours. We passed by the gates of the park, the registration building with the storks in the tree, and soon after we were with the great herds again. I spotted a lion in the herd and Paul pulled off for a while. It's amazing how calm the animals are. Here's an animal that you knew, the lion, that would eat you, but they all just sat around eating their grass. It's kind of a zen in the art of statistics. There are hundreds of thousands of us. There are a few of them. They'll get some of us, but statistically, it won't be me, so why worry? Anyway, the lion crouched for a while he was going to make a rush, and then he laid down. Stupid lions. We drove for about 4 hours until we found a nice spot for our lunch. Frankie, after saying she didn't want her lunch, and minutes after stopping, deposited her breakfast in the parking lot of this gift shop where we were stopped. Soon after getting on the road again, Hannah deposited her lunch on the floor of the van. We stopped to clean it up, but mostly in vain since half an hour later, she gave up her breakfast as well. About an hour later, Alex, in the Rover, had Paul pull over and he made his offering to the African bumpy road god. That was about the size of our excitement. Most of the time we spent talking, since reading and sleeping were impossible. The conversation mostly went like this: never again, stupid roads, stupid Africa. When is this going to end? Isn't there a plane that we could have taken? Whose idea was this stupid road trip anyway? Indeed, it took us the full 8 hours too, but mercifully the last 15 minutes were on a nicely paved road. Unfortunately, by the time we hit the paved road, a major storm system came in and the skies opened up on us. We reached the gates of Tarangire, home of the elephants, home of the famous tree climbing lions, home to leopard and boa constrictors and the great forests of Baobob trees. Mostly we saw rain and more rain. Driving to our night's lodge, the roads in Tarangire had become great muddy swamps. We saw some elephants driving in, but it was raining too hard to stop and appreciate them. Anyway, we've been on the road for 8+ hours at this point, and we're all ready to unwind in our beautiful new lodge. As luck would have it, there was a sopa lodge, like the ones we stayed in the last few nights, palaces in the jungle. But as our luck had it, the sopa was washed out. We couldn't get to it, so we had to stay at a different lodge that was more, let's call it rustic. Most of the quarters were tents. Ours was basically a cottage. Not bad, but as my feet were throbbing for the dozens of bites on each foot from some kind of bug, I feared for sleeping in this place. As we carried the gear from the lodge to the cottage, the rain intensified. The path we were on was muddy to the point that one's sandals were sunk in and make the glurp sound when you pulled them out. Of course, this was heaven for the boys. Within minutes, they were stripped to their waists and having a mud fight. A great tension reliever for all of us after the day in the car. We then cleaned off and went to the lodge area. This hotel was also situated on a hill, but this hill which was much steeper than the Serengeti Hotel. We were maybe 1,000 feet up, overlooking the great Tarangire River Valley. It was a beautiful sight to see, even if we only saw it through the driving rain. The lodge had an outdoor roofed sitting area. So after getting cleaned up, we went there to wait for our dinner. The kids sat at one table and played cards, while the adults sat at the next table and drank beer. I'll bet we had 30 beers at our table waiting the hour and a half for the restaurant to open. Even more remarkable, I'll bet the kids had 30 strawberry Fantas. You could tell the mosquitoes were coming out, but I had my legs soaking in a bath of skin so soft, so I figured I was safe. Dinner was miserable, or maybe we were spoiled. Our one benefit was that this place had a short order grill, so we managed to order French fries and burgers for the kids during our wait, so that by 7:30 we put the kids in our room to read ghost stories to each other. Our first night of freedom from the kids. So we were eating this bad food when Beth turns and says, I had 5 beers and I'm not even feeling lightheaded. We all started comparing notes and none of us felt lightheaded. I put forward the theory that we had each gained about 800 pounds on the trip. So for our body weight, the alcohol wasn't that much. But it was decided that they were giving us bad beer. We had a nice time talking adult talk, comparing notes about our kids. And then about 9, we went back to our room. Funny thing about bugs, they are attracted by lights. Since the kids had moved the card game to our room, and since they were using the spotlights next to the beds, by the time we got back from dinner, the one bed that it was determined I would sleep on had its white pillow black with bugs. I theorized that if I had left the bathroom light on and had the bedroom dark, all the bugs would fly in there. That was my initial theory. But after laying down for about 5 minutes, I found my head crawling with bugs. Okay, these weren't nasty bugs, just a kind of little black beetle. Still, bugs in the hair are a fashion don't. I proceeded to cover my pillow with my sheet and my head with a small pool of skin so soft. I then gargled with some of it and went to bed. Okay, that's it for the day. Let me share with you some pictures and the map. Let's go with the map first. Again, here is Africa. We were living in Jeddah. We flew into Kenya, drove to Arusha, and then drove all the way out to the vast end of the Serengeti. And this was the day that we had to go 8 hours all the way back to Arusha. Okay, and then we didn't get pictures yesterday, so I'll show you a little bit extra picture today. If I've done it right. Okay, there's Alex in the mud. If you could see, he's you sink up to your ankles in the mud. There's a baboon from earlier in the day. Here we were hot air ballooning over the Serengeti. Some antelopes from above. There's the balloon shot. There's the Baobob tree that I was talking about. There's a big hawk in this tree, if you can see it. There's the boys having their mud war. maybe the highlight of their trip. This was after the breakfast that we had after the hot air balloon ride. There's Joe sitting next to me. Here we are being attacked by birds at a lunch stop. There's one of the Tarangire elephants hiding back in the woods. There's the herd that had crossed the road right in front of the other truck. We didn't get to see it very well. Here we're back on the Serengeti, the great vast herds of animals. It's a pretty yellow bird flying into the car, attacking our lunch that we didn't like. There's Frankie, as you can see her in the picture behind, but this is even better as you can see her ankle deep in mud. Some giraffes. It's a baby zebra. The Thompson gazelles. There's the football birds. View from a herd up above. That's about as high as we got. Hippos in the water, hyena by the water, and that's it. That's the story for today. Hope to see you again tomorrow. Bye.